Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The New Normal for Mission Critical SAP Workloads. I think this is the part of the presentation where I'm supposed to tell you who I am and why you should listen to me. Instead, let's open up with a few past quotes from CEOs, and I'll have you guess which company they're referencing. We've learned and struggled for a few years here figuring out how to make a decent phone. PC guys are not going to just figure this out. They're not just going to walk in. That was quote number one. Quote number two, same company, $500 fully subsidized with a plan. I said that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Those are quotes from the former esteemed CEOs of Palm and BlackBerry, respectively, when talking about the Apple iPhone. That iPhone, as of November 2018, has sold 2.2 billion units in the past 11 years. And as of Q1 of this year, had 11.7% of all smartphone sales worldwide. How about this one? Neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition. Of course, that's from the CEO of Blockbuster in 2008. Now, there are a whole host of these type of quotes from various entrenched industry heads. It's easy for me to take pot shots at companies who, in hindsight, clearly missed a few industry predictions. But I do think it's important to understand. The title of this talk isn't hyperbole. The cloud is the present and the future of SAP workloads. My name is Brian Griffin, and I'm part of the AWS SAP Global Specialty Practice, which is a part of our professional services organization. For the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of working with our largest customers on some of the biggest SAP projects on the planet. Public production customers such as Kellogg's, Cardinal Health, Compass Group, and Lockheed Martin, to name a few. On my current project, I'm working side by side with SAP and a global system implementer on a $500 million S4 oil and gas implementation. I'm giving you a little bit of this background because I want you to understand that what we're going to discuss over the next hour isn't going to be theoretical or aspirational. These are real things being done on real projects with real customers. I'm hoping all of you are here today because you're interested in having a 100-level overview about running SAP on AWS and why this is the new paradigm. All right, so there are many reasons why customers are moving their SAP landscapes to AWS. We have many multiple-day workshops with customers to go through and talk this exact point over. In this 1-hour session, I'll focus on 4 pillars. For one, the depth and breadth of the platform, the complete cloud. Number 2, price. Number 3, security and compliance. And number 4, current platform certifications and a roadmap for where we think we're headed. So why do we call it a complete cloud for business innovation? Well, on the technical side, the AWS cloud spans 66 availability zones with 21 geographic regions around the world, with an announced plan for 12 more AZs and 4 more regions in Bahrain, Cape Town, Jakarta, and Milan. We offer 165 plus technical individual services, and AWS has been continually expanding its services to support virtually any cloud workload, whether it's compute, storage, databases, networking, analytics, machine learning, AI, IoT, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On the financial side, the Q1 2019 revenue for the AWS segment increased 41% year over year to $7.7 billion, making AWS a nearly $31 billion run rate business. And on the customer side, AWS has millions of active customers every month, with thousands of those customers running SAP on our platform and hundreds of those customers being enterprise production workloads. Well, why is that? What is the draw? Well, for one, I think the draw is the difference between having to make one-way door and two-way door decisions. A one-way door is characterized by the situation where once you walk through those doors, it's really hard to get back to your initial state easily. Think of this as the security line in an airport, or the airplane door when skydiving. These decisions are reality. We all have to make them. They require careful analysis. They probably require some sort of expert advice or peer mentoring. We make these decisions every day, but they have much longer decision cycles. A two-way door decision is where we stop overanalyzing things and just do it. You experience the other side, and if it doesn't work out, you pivot and you run another experiment. My argument is that AWS takes away all the traditional infrastructure barriers customers contemplate before they accept the next innovation of SAP. So when you think about it, when do most companies do the most amount of planning? It's usually at the beginning of a project. And when do companies typically know the very least about the project and their own capabilities and shortcomings? That's also at the beginning of a project. How many of you on the phone absolutely nailed that last SAP Quick Sizer estimate? You all gathered all the correct inputs from the technical and functional teams. Not only that, but the scope and the duration of the project you're on stayed exactly as planned. Of course, this isn't a reality, but when infrastructure comes in an hourly increment, it can be ready and deployable within minutes. AWS offers you the flexibility of a two-way door. That archiving initiative that you didn't get launched this year, no worries. Add some extra storage on the fly without even restarting the SAP systems. You went through a merger and acquisition suddenly and your data grew by twofold? No worries. Stop the system, change the instance type, start it back up. I'm not advocating that SAP shops shouldn't go through careful planning. I'm just saying that when you're on AWS, the penalty for getting something wrong is correctable in minutes or hours instead of months or years. And who better to trust your modernization to than AWS? So AWS opened its doors, or rather our APIs, in 2006. The first production service, S3, delighted customers and really changed the technology space forever. Since then, we've been building a robust, dynamic platform for customers to launch solutions on top of. We have a proven track record of innovation with over 4,100 new innovations being launched in the last 3 years alone. Of course, we support everything from NetWeaver 7.0 instances running on traditional databases such as Oracle, Microsoft SQL, DB2, ASE, but we've also stayed on the cutting edge with certifications of all the new digital core products such as SAP S/4HANA and SAP BW for HANA. We'll talk a little bit later on some of the exciting Sapphire announcements we made with SCP. And finally, with our large customer base, we're trying to unlock industry-specific knowledge that customers can use our platform to capitalize on. To help you understand where we're going, I find it helps a bit to show you where we've been. Some of you may have seen this slide before. It's one of my favorite ones to talk about. In 2008, SAP became a customer of ours, and we formalized our official partner status in 2011. So if any of you have used SAP CAL, the Cloud Appliance Library, or have taken training class at TechEd or been to Sapphire, you've likely seen SAP systems and used them on AWS without even knowing it. I won't jump into what each bullet point is here, but some key takeaways are that we've worked very hard with SAP over the last decade to make sure our platform is performant and reliable enough for production-grade certification. Our seminal moment came in 2016 with the release of the X1 platform. For the first time ever, you could launch a completely software-defined virtual machine in the cloud that would scale up to 2 terabytes of RAM and 132 vCPU, or scale out to 14 terabytes. Building on the success of these instances, we followed them up a year later with our X1E platform, which offers 4 terabytes of RAM. Lastly, we took a quantum leap forward with the introduction of our Nitro system, which I'll discuss in more detail on some later slides. And this slide isn't just about feats of engineering. I'd also like to point out that at SAP Sapphire this month, we launched the SAP S/4HANA Quick Start, which allows you to load your software up to an S3 bucket and have AWS automatically install S4 for you in under 3 hours. We've also been focusing in SAP digital transformations, so being able to look at API integration of SAP applications to interface with SAP. Aside from certifying infra, we've formed a strong partnership with SAP on their SaaS products, things like SAP Concur, SuccessFactors, Hybris, as well as many others. Now, this is the PowerPoint depiction of a cloud cake. Like all cakes, the base needs to be rock solid before you put anything meaningful on top of it. So yeah, at the base infrastructure layer, we offer customers the capability to create architectures capable of supporting up to 4 nines of availability, meaning less than 53 minutes a year or 4 minutes and 23 seconds of downtime per month. And this isn't just theoretical. This is actually proven out by a recent report by Gartner, which proved that we had over 99.99% availability throughout last year. Our S3 service offers infinite scale and durability at 11.9. So what does that mean? That means that if your company stores 10 million objects in S3, you can expect that we will lose one of those objects once every 10,000 years. And this all comes with a platform that can meet or greatly exceed most customer requirements. In the middle layers, we have our SAP supported databases and applications. We don't operate much here aside from making sure that we keep up with the certifications required out of Waldorf. This is where customers lean on our global system implementers and traditional SIs to do all the requisite DB and application support. The reason you purchase a commercial off-the-shelf product like SAP and why 77% of the world's transactions touch an SAP system is because they've played in this space for the past 47 years and continue to focus the vast amount of their effort and time here. And at the top, the icing on the cake, it's the AWS Cloud Services. This is where we predict the realization of SAP's intelligent enterprise will really live. You hear us reference this as the SAP Extend strategy, which we'll talk about a little later in later slides. Okay, the second pillar we said we were going to talk about was cost effectiveness. AWS offers low pay-as-you-go pricing with no upfront expenses or long-term contract commitments. We're able to build and manage a global infrastructure at scale and pass the cost savings benefits on to customers in the form of lower prices. It's because of these efficiencies of our scale and expertise that we've been able to reduce prices 72 times since AWS launched in 2006. And this wasn't front-loaded by any means, as we've recently reduced prices 15 times in the last 4 years alone. This is something that's built into our DNA. We call it the flywheel, or you might hear it referred to as the virtuous cycle. Great customer experience leads to more customers leads to AWS having increased buying power and efficiency, which in turn drives down costs, which we pass back to customers, and we start the whole cycle all over again. With the industry's most extensive data center footprint, the AWS global infrastructure enables more customers to benefit from cloud economics and reduce the TCO of their overall IT infrastructure. By deploying and delivering their workloads in AWS, a 2018 IDC research report indicated that customers can achieve important financial benefits that increase growth, drive efficiencies, and realize important long-term cost reductions, including an average 51% lower 5-year TCO, with 62% of the IT staff being more efficient. So what if I told you that when you're mature on our platform, your staff could focus a significant portion of the day working on newer innovative things instead of things which we like to call undifferentiated heavy lifting? What if I told you that analysts typically see the cycle time for the return on investment for a move to AWS to be only 6 months, and during that time frame, you would experience a threefold increase in the amount of features that were delivered? So those are some general AWS stats. Let's take a look at a SAP customer case study. If we take a quick look, GE Transportation CEO validates that their company experienced what the analysts I mentioned before were suggesting, which is a reduction of TCO by over 50% by migrating their SAP applications into AWS. And you'll see this is a very common number when we get to the use case slides at the very end. On to the third pillar, security. How many of you took some time out of your day today to really think about how happy you are that your virus scan software kept you bug-free? Did anyone here send a thank you email to your corporate email administrator for keeping your inbox spam-free today? Probably not, right? Because security isn't everyone's favorite topic unless you're one of the few in the cybersecurity field. But it is job zero for Amazon. It's so important that we're hosting a standalone conference called Reinforce in Boston next month on the 25th and the 26th. Please join us out there if that is your particular passion. It is a thankless job, but as hackers and bad actors increase in number, AWS is leading the shift from reactive to proactive security. Let's dive deep a little bit on security. AWS offers over 200 security compliance government security features. All AWS services that store customer data allow those customers to encrypt that data. And if you want to have the keys to that encryption, you can use the AWS Key Management Service to control your own keys. Out of 165 services that I mentioned previously, 116 of those offer encryption right out of the box. That's 3 times more than any other cloud service provider. And of those, 54 of them fully integrate with KMS, which allows us to do such things as having temporary or automatic rotating keys. So what does this mean for SAP? This means that you can encrypt all of your data at rest, no matter if it's on block storage or object storage. Best of all, you don't suffer a performance penalty for doing so because AWS processes the encryption overhead on the back end. This means that you can run your workloads across a broad range of industries, which we'll see in later slides, and meet a number of certification requirements. This means that you have your fingertips on everything that is required to delight your grumpy system auditors. And best of all, you can utilize services such as AWS Config or AWS Control Tower, AWS Service Catalog to mandate and verify that the security guardrails that have been agreed upon by the business and by IT are actually enforced. Lastly, the fourth pillar, certification and support. As many folks in the call can attest to, there's a huge chasm between what something that is working versus something that is certified and supported. This chasm holds the remnants of once promising careers, folks who gambled on the path less traveled and found themselves in a situation where nobody is on the other line when you pick up the phone call for help. You do not want to be opening up SAP service messages with Waldorf and find yourself in an unsupported scenario. You don't have to make that distinction when you're on AWS. One of the core support and certification items to pass within SAP is SAP's HANA's HWCCP benchmark. In a nutshell, this is a benchmark which lets customers know that the hardware that they're building systems on is configured in such a way that HANA performance can run as designed. For folks who aren't aware, HANA's performance is managed by a strict core-to-memory ratio in TDI4 and a little bit more relaxed ratio for TDI5. We announced a key innovation at AWS reInvent in December of last year, and that innovation was years in the making. It started out with the purchase of Annapurna Labs, who at the time were making huge advances in custom silicon. And the end result is what we call the Nitro system. It's comprised of the Nitro hypervisor. It's a lightweight silicon-based device handling system, which gives us the capability to have bare metal performance and management with all the same EC2 API experience customers have grown to love. This is set up to be able to deliver some of the innovations in the platform that you've seen recently, such as 100 gig networking, NVMe storage, and an explosion of new customized instance types to match specific customer use cases. One of those instance types was our U-class high memory instances. Right now in private preview, customers can launch servers which have 24 terabytes of memory, and that's in a single server, and that's twice the capacity, twice the scale-up capacity of any software-defined cloud-native instance. This single instance can push nearly 500,000 SAPs, which is SAP's standard performance metrics, all on its own. So if you want to start running those in, 2-tier, 3-tier configurations where you're scaling that out, you're going to be able to put together some absolutely massive systems if required. Let's dive deeper on the engineering innovations, which are a true differentiator of our platform. When I started in 2015, the box to the left was the largest instance type that we had available. 244 gig of main memory and 32 vCPU was the largest instance type around. It was at R3 and R4, 8X large. A year later, we would go on to launch the X1 platform, which is running Intel's Haswell V7 processors, which was at the time the largest native cloud instance available in the world at 2 terabytes. A year later, we launched that 4 terabyte X1E that I mentioned before, and that was large enough to address over 95% of SAP's customer base running HANA at that time. But we heard from customers that they wanted to have a roadmap for larger instances. After all, we're not just serving the 95%. We want to take on SAP's largest, most critical, most demanding customers. And they told us that they needed to see a committed runway before they decided to launch their environments on it. So we did what we always do. We listened. We went back to the drawing board with Intel. And I'm happy to say that customers can currently now run single node configurations in 6, 9, and 12 terabytes. And again, that's a single node scale up. Customers in our private preview can launch 18 and 24 terabyte single node boxes. And we expect that to be fully GA by the end of 2019. So if you do some back of the napkin math here, you can see that in a span of 4 years, we have grown our largest instance type by nearly 100x. That's absolutely huge for customers, and expect that that's the pace of innovation that the cloud brings. Now, having very large instance types is one thing, but the arms race to have the biggest instance starts to hit a point of diminishing returns. Let's talk about these instances. Let's talk about, I guess, why these instances are different and what else you'll see in the marketplace. So first of all, these EC2 instance types were purpose-built for SAP HANA workloads. You may hear them called EC2 bare metal instances, and just so you're not confused, this is a designation for their performance and hardware control capabilities. This does not mean that there isn't a hypervisor. There is. We've just removed the constraints you typically would associate with one. You can launch and manage these instances through the same AWS CLI or SDKs that you've grown accustomed to using. You have out-of-the-box connectivity to other EC2 instances without the need for custom networking configurations or a hybrid architecture. This has full integration to all the other AWS services, including EBS, S3, CloudFormation, CloudWatch, Config, etc. And best of all, it's interoperable with the same IAM framework as the rest of the AWS for authentication, authorization, and auditing. These Nitro instances were quite an engineering feat for us because they were the first ever EC2 instances powered by an 8-socket server platform based on Intel Skylake processors. And because they have EBS as the storage layer, you can go through and take advantage of the EBS natural elastic storage capacity, which is certainly a huge competitive differentiation. Just like the SAP, just like the certifications for the X1 and X1E instances, they were designed to support enterprise-class data protection and business continuity capabilities, including multi-AZ high availability. So that's high availability across the data centers, which is uniquely something that's AWS, and you can run that in a synchronous fashion so that you're not losing any particular data if one node happens to go down, or more importantly, one data center happens to go down. And it also supports multi-region disaster recovery configurations where you're sending asynchronous logs over to another AWS region. And it supports all the standard configurations for backups and EBS snapshots as well. What this is not a separate data center connected to an MPLS circuit where your database is sitting in one network segment and your app servers are sitting in another network segment tens of milliseconds away. Could we have done that? Yes, absolutely. We could have done it, and it would have been a lot cheaper, and it would have been a lot easier to do, and it probably would have been out to market a lot faster. But that just didn't feel right. Our customers moved to the cloud, and the benefits of moving to the cloud is having capabilities like native storage snapshots, encryption at rest, elastic storage capacity to change the size of that storage or change the type of that storage to be more or less performant on the fly. And the ability to use, HANA native features like HANA system replication for HA and DR purposes. We wanted you to be able to go through and do that without having to do all sorts of network tomfoolery and, experience performance degradation. You're not having to wait weeks to deliver a server to a different part of the cloud, which is, deemed as special. And then lastly, I forgot to mention I mentioned the scale up. We had some pretty interesting announcements at Sapphire for the OLTP for S/4HANA. You can now scale that out to 48 terabytes. So you can string together 4 of those 12 terabyte instances. It's supported design from SAP. And if you felt constrained by the original 50 terabyte scale out metric that we had before with TDI4, that's still valid, but we now supported our X1E platform to meet TDI5 requirements, and that it can scale out to 100 terabytes. So before you attempt to go through and use anything with the TDI5 certification, work with us and SAP to make sure you're good to go there. And typical AWS fashion, moving from one instance type to another is something that you can do on these larger instance types just as easily as you can do on a smaller instance type. It's just as easy to move from a 6 terabyte box to a 12 terabyte box as it is for me to move from a 1 terabyte box to a 2 terabyte box. And this scenario plays itself out all the time on standard SAP projects. You can temporarily upsize servers to crush through SAP upgrades or seasonal workloads, and then scale them back down to normal after the heightened period of activity is concluded. I do this all the time on my existing projects. We have these loads which will only happen prior to go live. So we take our servers, and which are running on M5's 2x larges, and we temporarily make them 12 times larger. So the SLT data loads that, again, traditionally took somewhere around 12 hours are now running in under an hour. And right after doing that, we scale the servers back down and pass the systems back to those SAP consultants on the other end who are able to go through and use the system again in the functional manner that they were designed. So this is huge, huge cost savings, huge capability, huge flexibility, and the possibilities there are pretty much endless. Now, another component to the certification and support pillar is the digital transformation, or what SAP will call the intelligent enterprise. We believe companies are going to start this transformation with a mixture of tools, from native AWS features to SAP's own SAP offerings to SAP's latest generations of software. So how do we start the digital transformation? Well, our customers are moving to the cloud to accelerate innovation and untrap their data and drive new insights, achieve higher savings, and reduce their business risks. While many enterprises are starting their cloud journey by moving individual projects and perhaps claiming that they are quote unquote cloud first for new applications, what we've seen is that the organizations who are most successful are those that aggressively address the challenges of a mass migration early on in their journey. When I take a look across my professional services engagements, I see a very common life cycle, and it's the customer journey in cloud will include the 4 phases that you see there: the project, foundation, migration, and reinvention. Early on in the journey, enterprises are in this project phase where they are looking to develop brand new business capabilities by taking advantage of a subset of cloud native features. So AWS is evaluated and then kind of vetted on a project by project basis to understand if it makes sense, to launch there. And then after experiencing the benefits of the cloud, customers then build that foundation to scale their cloud adoption. And this includes creating a landing zone, creating a center of excellence, an operation model, doing all the security and compliance readiness. And then AWS, at the conclusion of that, AWS becomes, the proven choice and is often used for all net new projects. But then customers move into this migration phase, where they start to migrate the bulk of their workloads, including mission-critical applications like SAP or entire data centers of the cloud, as they look to, increase their adoption across their growing IT portfolio. What's interesting or surprising is that actually very few companies are in this migration phase of the total. Estimates are that today, less than 25% of enterprise-level workloads have been moved to the cloud. So even though we've been around for quite some time, and we have thousands of SAP customers and hundreds of public enterprise customers that are running on AWS, this is still just early days in the cloud. We expect to see some significant push in the oncoming years. And part of that, for sure, is driven by SAP's 2025 directive for SAP HANA, where HANA is going to be the default database or the only supported database in the SAP ecosphere. And I don't know if it's a mental shift, or more likely, when you're taking a look at SAP HANA boxes, the hardware for those can be quite expensive and rigorous. And when people are transitioning from an old school database into this new columnar and memory database, they figure they're already making a change. We might as well, make that change and go to the cloud as well. And the end stage of this journey, I would say, is this reinvention phase. This is the part where, operations in the cloud are really focused on. The customers focus on reinvention. They focus on taking advantage of the flexibility and capabilities of AWS to their fullest extent, and then really speeding time to market and innovation. Today, we see that most organizations have these, two distinct paths to the next generation of infrastructure. And in the last few years, we've finally seen some deliberate effort to focus on moving enterprise migration to that mass migration mentality. And if you're looking to shortcut your journey, AWS has many options to get you on the right path. As mentioned previously, there are now 3 AWS quick starts, which can stand up SAP NetWeaver, SAP HANA, and SAP S4 HANA in a matter of hours. If you want something more tangible, if you want to see and touch your data while it's in the cloud, you can utilize specific SAP tool sets like DMO with System Move. After all the requisite source system planning, you can move your instance to the cloud within a few weeks. We've had customers move 25 terabyte databases across the wire in less than 42 hours. So your actual downtime is definitely measured in single days. Single digit days, often 1 to 2 days, depending on your database size. And if you want to go faster than that, you certainly can. You can use a competency partner, folks who have specialized tool sets, companies like SAP who offer things like near zero downtime, or SNPs, transformation backbone, which allows you to ship the bulk of your data over into the cloud, and then it just requires a quick cutover and DNS swap in order for the new system to go live. And of course, if you are really trying to retire your technical debt and move to the cloud in a big way, we would suggest that you take a look at the competency partners that I mentioned. We have a whole host of those who have specific AWS SAP competencies, and then start your projects with them, and then supplement that with AWS professional services, who are some of my brethren. And the reason why you want to go through and do that is, for sure, a lot of the system implementers or traditional system implementers, they may have, they almost all have excellent SAP backgrounds. They're very fluent in SAP, and then they also have a whole section that are fluent in the cloud. However, having someone who is bilingual in both SAP and AWS is absolutely critical to any project's phase. So make sure to do your due diligence there. The best way to go through and make sure that requisite experience is there is to supplement a partner with professional services. And lastly, let's take a look at some unnecessarily painful tasks, some things that you can do to retire some technical debt, things like SAP GUI deployment, and some AWS native services such as AppStream, which can go and ease that pain. So just as an example, as customers, change the slide. There we go. As customers migrate existing or new SAP systems on AWS, they're always looking for ways to provide users secure, high performance, and simple access to infrastructure. And while we have many mechanisms in place to move SAP backend servers from on-premises data centers to our cloud, we've received feedback from customers to drive this shift to the client side as well. So what AppStream does is it enables you to shift your focus shift the customer focus by providing a fully managed service to stream SAP GUI or other applications from within AWS. So instead of installing SAP GUI locally on a device, which requires end users to leave their machines on the corporate intranet and dealing with myriads of device-specific configuration issues, customers can use AppStream to stream SAP GUI and provide users instant on access to SAP servers from an HTML5 capable web browser. So with SAP GUI and the data co-located on AWS, users experience a very high quality, very low latency visualization experience. The only thing that's being shipped across to your screen is, the change in the pixels. And if you've ever had to roll out SAP GUI packages and configuration files to hundreds or thousands of users, you know this can be a long and arduous process. Or if concurrently, if you don't do a desktop deployment and instead you rely on something like Citrix, where you have to manage your own Citrix farm just to run SAP GUI, with AppStream, you get increased security over that model, as well as cost benefits with the benefit of better performance as well. And this isn't just limited to SAP GUI, right? This is a perfect use case for other SAP products like SAP Analytics for Office, called AO, which is basically the successor to SAP BEX Analyzer, where end users are running client-side queries to pull back large sets of information and then doing some computational intensive tasks on their local machines. When this actually sits side by side in the cloud with SAP applications connected to, the performance is fantastic, the user experience is dramatically improved, and the end result is the end user appreciates the UI and can utilize the tool set for which it was purposely purchased for. So we've heard now about how we can start our digital transformation and retire technical debt and some tools in our tool bag to do so. What are SAP and AWS doing broadly to help us customers along the way? Well, let's take a step back and think about what SAP is. SAP is a business process platform with many facets. They have market-wide dominance in documenting what happens when we sell something, when we buy something, or when we hire someone. And SAP is transforming in two major dimensions themselves. One is a move to support the hyperscale cloud providers, which they've coined SAP Embrace. You've probably heard them talk about that at SAP Sapphire. And that's to go through and drive down the cost of infrastructure. The second is to create and consume services to accelerate customer innovation. And one of them that's particularly interesting is the notion of machine learning, artificial intelligence, IoT, data lakes, etc. Now, this is a great mantra, but SAP customers know that what works today is something which needs to be protected. SAP environments are fairly stable, fairly well guarded within the IT landscape. At its core, SAP is a monolithic pillar. So what can be done to make it more agile and flexible? Well, we can utilize the innovation that comes natural to AWS to increase efficiency and start parsing functionality out of SAP and into areas which are a little more nimble. Maybe that's using SAP's own SCP services. Did you know that SCP is available on AWS in 7 different regions, and we support 5 times the services of the next nearest competitor? Or perhaps you can use AWS native integration, which if you went to our booth in Sapphire, you could see a number of those being demonstrated. What we started doing is putting together, on top of this, we started putting together industry-specific solution sets to help customers on their journey. A good example of that is our GXP compliance questionnaire, which goes side by side with the SAP HANA Quick Start. There's definitely a lot more to do in this space, but we're certainly marching in that direction because we understand that an industry focus is important for SAP customers. What's certain, though, is that building a bigger and bigger monolith is not the pattern that the IT industry is going. And finally, I don't think you should take my word for it. The best advocacy comes from our SAP customers themselves. As you can see, we have quite a few, and this list is only a fraction of those who are running on our platform. So let's dive a little deeper. The first thing of note is the depth and breadth of industry coverage. Nearly every industry that SAP plays in, we have customers, many of which are quite large, trusting their mission-critical workloads to our platform across a vast swath of SAP products. This isn't just ECC or just BW. This is a whole host of SAP's product landscape. So whether it's BP or Origin in the energy sector, AIG or Liberty Mutual in the insurance vertical, Kellogg's or Luxottica in manufacturing, fast retailing, also known as Uniqlo, or Brooks Brothers in retail, or maybe it's BMS in Cardinal Health in the healthcare life sciences space, or lastly, Lockheed Martin or NS2 in the public sector. At this point, all of these companies have broken the glass and answered the question as to whether it makes good business sense to move to the AWS cloud. Please let us broker a one-on-one conversation between you and them so you can hear about their experience firsthand. Again, our best advocates are customers, and that's where the bulk of our innovation comes from. Over 95% of all features released on the AWS platform year over year come directly from customer feedback. Sure, every now and again, 5% of those will be a net new idea, something that the market's never seen before, something like AWS Lambda or SageMaker, things where no one else had anything like that before AWS invented it. But the vast majority comes directly from customers. So all this sounds great. How should we get going? Well, the pattern that we see is kind of shown here. First step, get your workloads onto AWS as quickly as possible. Maybe it's a lift and shift. Maybe it is a heterogeneous system copy. We often see step 1 and step 2 done at the same time, where a customer decides that it doesn't really make sense to go through a digital transformation to S4 BW, but then also stay in the on-prem world. That just feels wrong. Once you've moved your data to the cloud, allow the cloud services to inspect and enrich that data. And lastly, step 4, follow the principles of DevOps. For those who aren't familiar, it's now the prevailing industry understanding that this is the best way that's the best way to operate, is to run what you build, to go through and build infrastructure as code, because that's repeatable and auditable and something that you can deploy in one region or many regions. It's something that doesn't go through and get tired. It's something that is self-documenting, and it allows you to have confidence that you can deploy the same solution time and time again, and increase your security, availability, and reliability. But I'll close out the session just talking about a few customer highlights. So you can see that Del Monte, when they moved to AWS, their deployment timeline typically took them 2 weeks. Now that takes them about 1 hour. In a matter of 4 months, they moved 200 servers and 50 SAP environments onto AWS. If you take a look at what Golfmark IT, you'll notice that same number for total cost of ownership reduction, again, higher than 50%. Increased reliability when they moved their 30 SAP environments to our platform. And then you take a look at some of the latest innovations, or S4 HANA. They have 2 million plus staffs running on SAP S4 HANA and AWS. So this is Sumitomo Chemical, a large chemical company in Japan, and they experienced a 40% reduction in HANA job processing time. And these are numbers that I consistently see on my projects. Part of that, for sure, is that when you move from an old HANA system into new HANA hardware, which AWS has, you're absolutely going to get the benefit of, faster chipsets and things of that nature. But part of that is also inherent in the platform, because going and doing a hardware refresh, for example, isn't an IT project anymore. If you want to go through and AWS launches a brand new instance type that has a brand new Skylake processor or the next generation processor after that, what that means for a customer in order to take advantage of that breakthrough in technology is to stop the instance and start the instance on the new instance family. That's all you need to go through and change. And what's really interesting is when you do that, and a great example is our R4 instances. When we swapped from R3 instances to R4 instances, we not only got a 20% bump in CPU speed, but we also got a 20% reduction in cost. That was a pretty big day when that was announced. And then fast forward to R5, that was released like a year and a half later, and R5 ended up having the exact same price, but between 11 and 19% performance improvement over the R4 instances. So it's not very often that you have that you get the very latest and greatest for the same price or cheaper. So that is very much a reality in AWS. And then lastly, we absolutely have customers who are already using our EC2 high memory instances. Whirlpool is a great example. If you want to take a look at their quote, it just works. No different than a normal EC2. No pre-work, no testing, no special AMI. I just tried it and it worked. And that to me is the best bar for a customer. When their first experience doing something that's supposed to be new and untested, they can go and be successful on the first try, is really a testament to the platform and a testament to the amount of engineering and hard work that the teams have provided. And with that, I will open up the call with questions. And Mike, are we seeing any questions from panelists or from the audience? There we go. Okay. How can I find out which partners to work with? Great question. So AWS has on our website, you can go to, if you go into your browser and type in SAP on AWS, you should find an SAP microsite. On that particular site, they should have a whole list of competency partners, and those are partners that have gone through and there's a number of requirements. They need to have a certain number of individuals for each tier. You need to have a certain number of individuals who are certified, have certifications from AWS, a certain number of associate degrees or associate certifications or professional certifications. You need to have a certain amount of clients already running SAP on AWS, a certain amount of spend. So there are some thresholds that they have to meet. So you can rest assured that the people who are on that, the implementers that are on that have walked the walk, and they're not just talking the talk. Okay. Just a second. You start showing the EC2 instances I see on the right scale out or SAP certified, but the yellow and the blue, does that mean the scale out options on the left are not SAP certified? No, everything that we put on, everything that AWS has launched that were on any of these slides are all certified by SAP. I should mention that, I spent a fair amount of time talking about X1s and the U-class instance type, but there are several other families that go through and support SAP instances. So we don't just have these, monster-sized instances. I think it starts from 244 gig of memory and it goes all the way up. And for non-production instances, things like dev and QA, you can go and have less than 244 gig or a quarter terabyte of memory. And all of those will go through and pass pass SAP's HWCCT check. Let's see. I think there's some questions to go through and elaborate a little more on AO for AppStream. I think that'd probably be best to have a one-on-one conversation. But yeah, it looks like a fantastic use case there, especially because the amount of data that you suck back from AO can be pretty large. The presentation is going to be shared after, actually, you know what? The presentation is not going to be shared, but there is going to be a recording. And I believe we can go through and get you a PDF of the presentation after the fact. So my email address is BRIAGRIF. That's again, BRIAGRIF @amazon.com. Feel free to send me a personal note and we'll make sure that you're taken care of. And then, does AWS support migrating high memory instances to a lower one, e.g. from 4 terabyte to a 3 terabyte instance? We don't have a 3 terabyte instance that I'm aware of yet, but yes, absolutely. If you want to size up or size down, totally a valid scenario. We have customers that go through and do that all the time, specifically if they want to run an archiving type solution, or if they get caught up in a divestiture, you can swap instance types from place to place. You do need to make sure you're running convertible instance types to make that swap, so there's absolutely no penalty. If you're doing it all on demand, then there's never any penalty. But if you're doing reserved instance types, you have a specific type of RI in order to go through and do that conversion without any cost implication or without having to sell that particular reserved instance. But absolutely, we have customers who do that all the time. Take a few more questions. Do you have some S4 HANA high availability architecture diagrams you could use for a reference? Yes, absolutely. So again, if you're looking for SAP on AWS on our microsite, or if you go to, if you type into your browser SAP HANA, SAP S4 HANA Quick Start, the very first page that's going to come up is our Quick Start that we just released. And what's cool about that is it has a whole planning overview guide. It also has that architecture diagram for S4 on what our quick start will go in provision. So you can do that in all-in-one availability zone. You can break it across multiple availability zones. What's really, really cool about it is that S4 HANA, when you set it up for high availability on a operating system like SUSE, you can choose to say yes for HA, and it sets up SUSE HAE for you automatically. So for folks who haven't ever done that, it can be quite intensive and challenging if you've never done it before. So that takes, I'd say, days worth of time out of the equation. And what's really neat is it allows you to fail back and forth between HANA instances whenever you shut an instance down or if there's any sort of degradation. So if anyone's had to fail back an instance the opposite direction, you know that it can be somewhat command line intensive process. The HAE software has that built into it and comes with SUSE HAE, comes with the SLES for SAP OS variant. So pretty cool stuff there. But yeah, the overall architecture guidelines are all out there on that SAP microsite. And if you have any questions in general for running SAP on AWS, there is a whole host of resources available at AWS to help you. Your primary point of contact are going to be the AWS SAP Partner Solution Architects. These are individuals that spend all day, every day, talking to customers, doing the initial pre-sales conversations, doing pricing, doing sizing, helping out with architectures, architecture diagrams, doing one-to-one mappings of a customer's existing environment to what it would look like on AWS. And you just talk to your AWS account manager, and they can go through and reach out to that partner solution architect. Those partner solution architects, by the way, are also the same ones that are doing white papers and also doing the ones that are doing certifications in Waldorf. So busy team, but that is their function within AWS. And then obviously, if you want to have someone who's holding your hand and is there with you through your entire journey, that's where my team comes through, professional services, and we are the how team. If all of this sounds great, but you don't know what to do to get started, we will embed ourselves as part of the project and kind of show you how to run your SAP operations on AWS. How do we differentiate HEC to SAP on AWS? So HEC, HANA Enterprise Cloud, can run on AWS. We're very happy about that announcement. So what HEC is SAP's, I guess some would call it a platform as a service. Other people will say it's more of software as a service. Regardless, the big differentiating factor there is that when you run SAP on AWS natively, you have all of the controls over each individual service. But the downside is that in the shared responsibility model, anything from the hypervisor and up, the customer or a partner is responsible for. AWS handles everything from the hypervisor down below, so all the infrastructure. What HEC will go through and allow you to do is have a single throat to choke. They will trust AWS behind the scenes to manage everything from the hypervisor down, but everything from the hypervisor up to do with basis administration and backups and all the stuff to keep your SAP applications lights on. The HEC team will go through and provide. Obviously, there's a cost for that. So make sure to do your due diligence and see if it makes sense to go with SAP HEC for your organization, or if it makes more sense to go AWS native and, do a combination of a partner and professional services. Or if you are comfortable with your own cloud chops, you could go through and do it on your own. I think I got time for maybe one more question. How much time does it take to move a VM to bare metal? So again, it isn't actually bare metal. It's a bare metal experience. It takes as fast as the machine can stop and start. So if it's a smaller instance, like a small, if it's I guess it depends how much row store you have for your HANA memory. But to start the systems up, and shut them down, figure that it takes 7 to 8 minutes to shut a system down in Linux, and then again 7 minutes to 15 minutes to start a system up. So that's when you get the command line, and then just depends on how big your database is and how much you have in the row store to actually start HANA up. But that is it. This is something that's 100% software defined. It's not getting moved to some special area within AWS. It is all these things are co-located in the same network fabric. So it's just moving drives from place to place in a software-defined manner. That's the only difference. And with that, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, if you've enjoyed this session, you can leave some feedback in the overall, questionnaire that you are going to receive. And if you haven't learned anything in this guide, please go to jobs.amazon.com. I'd love to have you on the professional services team. It's a big world out there, a lot of customers that need to be served. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.